We live?
Okay.
We are. Welcome everyone. Friday, March 5th, special districts advisory committee meeting. Can we meet? Oh, I need to use the mic. And I probably need to turn the mic on. All right, even better. All right, can we start with the roll call, please? All right. Kim Dorner, present. Jack Beebe,
Present.
Ann Baldridge, Paul Bushy,
Present.
Jeff Edkin, absent. James Gordon,
Present.
Diane Hansen, absent. Albert Lau,
Here.
Hector Martinez, absent. Dave McQueen,
Present.
Marty Miller,
Here.
Mark Roback, absent. Joel Scalzetti, absent. Mike Sims,
Here.
Oliver Smith.
Here.
We have a quorum with 10 members present. Okay, fabulous, thank you. Chris, can I ask you to lead us in the pledge, please?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I probably should give you that.
Stand big flag, right hand over your heart. Begin. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we have agenda review. Do we have any changes to the agenda by staff?
No changes.
No changes. Okay. Any comments, questions on the agenda? All right. Now is the time for open expression. Do we have any public comments or anyone wishing to take 3 minutes to speak?
We do not.
We do not. Right, and then we will move on to the consent calendar. One item on consent, which is the minutes for December 15th meeting in your packet, would entertain a motion.
I'll motion approved.
Yes, first, Mr. Boogie. And a second. Second, Mr. Sims. Any discussion on the consent item? Roll call or voice vote?
I think voice vote would be fine.
Voice vote.
Can I ask one question? Is Alex online?
Yes.
So, okay, very good.
Is that okay to do voice vote?
Alex?
Yeah, if unless there's a member joining via teleconference, then a voice vote is just fine.
Okay, and I don't believe we have a member. All right, so all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, it passes. So we are now on to our first business item, which is an informational report on property tax allocations and exchanges in San Diego County. And we have a fantastic extra brochure on that. Everything is fine. Okay, so thank you. And committee members, Michaela Peters, analyst 1 for the record. Before the committee is one of our planned informational reports to provide a friendly check-in on a commission topic of interest that considerably ties into the foreground of our planning and regulatory duties to facilitate orderly growth. This informational report checks in on the 1% property tax allocation and exchange processes in San Diego County and its relationship to LAFCO. There continues to be a noticeable increase for both. There continues to be a noticeable increase in interest from both developers and local agencies in how the exchange process works when it comes to syncing up jurisdictional changes. And there are probably a few reasons for the increased interest in this property tax exchange, but certainly at or near top of the list is the swing we are seeing within the development community to redirect development away from the unincorporated areas and into cities, which means, among other things, triggering property tax negotiations under LAFCO statute. So a very prominent and recent example of this redirection involves the Otay Village 13 project. And with this context in mind, the informational report before you is in brochure format and hopefully provides a user-friendly primer on all things involving the 1% property allocation and the decision-making process to make exchanges among the local agencies. This includes LAFCO's role to determine the property tax exchange in certain instances like city corporations and district formations, as well as the prescribed negotiation processes among local agencies anytime jurisdictional changes are proposed. So some of the key takeaways are summarized on the second fold of the brochure, and a few of them are shown up here on the screen, including nearly 0.5% in property tax revenue, or 47 cents of every dollar in San Diego County goes to local school and college districts. Most of the remaining 1% property tax revenue, or about 38 cents of every dollar, goes to the county of San Diego and its 18 cities. And special districts only get about 3 cents of every dollar. And while the 1% property tax applied to land and structures does not change, the allocation among local agencies does. This is because every jurisdictional change that comes to LAFCO is subject to mandatory reviews and possible exchanges. In fact, the commission cannot act on a proposal until the review and possible exchange is completed. As mentioned, LAFCO determines the exchange, if any, when creating a new city or special district. All other jurisdictional changes are subject to a prescribed negotiation process. And a couple of key distinctions within the negotiated tax exchange include the County Board of Supervisors is responsible for determining the tax exchange for special district annexations and detachments, with the qualifier that the Board of Supervisors must negotiate in good faith with the districts. The county and cities have equal standing in the negotiated tax exchange process and statute. Master tax exchanges are allowed, and several of them remain here in play in San Diego County from the early 1980s, with the qualifier that any local agency can request individual negotiations at any time. These master tax exchanges apply to most of the cities and provide anywhere between 34% to 53% of the county's take of the 1% to the annexing cities. And however, and at least under current statute, the negotiated tax exchange process does not include a hard stop. So if agreements are not reached through the 7-step process, they can simply restart until resolution. So I will stop my presentation there and invite any feedback or comments or any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, did you do this?
I had lots of help.
Good.
Yes.
This is a good thing. I'm not. Awesome. I personally have never seen like such a consolidated report. I learned a lot by reading it. So thank you. That was very interesting to me. So well done. My super minor is just some of the takeaway cents per dollar don't perfectly line up with percentages on from 2 to 3, and I don't know if that's intentional or if there's subtleties in there, but you know, and that would be my only comment. But it's super minor.
Okay.
You got 47 cents the dollar. You got 45%. So that's just. I mean,
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but and if you look at those, just look at your percentages and your cents per dollar. They don't, but it'd be more like an engineer like Jack or something. Bring that. I didn't even know that. So yeah, very good job. It's awesome.
Any other comments or questions on this? I do have one. So we heard from North County Fire. I think that it's the SDA dinner not too long ago. Was it Valley Center Fire? Thank you for that correction. Who was looking for a property tax allocation? Would they go through this negotiated tax exchange process? What's the process for them to get property tax allocation?
So
I believe that is correct, but
well, in that case, so because Valley Center doesn't get any property tax at all, the county would have to holistically through a process, not through LAFCO, but just through the Board of Supervisors, say, okay, we're going to give you X% of our share. And as we've understood to date, and I'll defer to the fire professionals, there's just no interest, at least to date. I know one of our commissioners, Mr. Willis, has certainly been advocating for the county to look at that, but
Would that reallocate it from existing agencies that get it? Right? I'm
it
assuming.
would reallocate it, I understand, from the county's share.
Sure.
More specifically from county
fire district, the newly formed fire district under the county. Would come from their share of that.
It's more of a question. So I'm assuming the successor agencies are successor to the redevelopment agencies in the past.
I'm sorry, one more time.
Successor agencies, are you referring to the successor agency to the redevelopment agencies?
So, well, that would
Is all.
be, captured under, so they still get a property tax, right? The remnants of the remains of all the, redevelopment agencies. Into one or two bodies, they still get, at least according to Michaela's chart, 12% of the property tax. And I know that they're still negotiating on how to finally kind of distribute that among the cities and districts of the county going forward. And, you know, that'd actually be an interest. We should perhaps with the chair's blessing, actually ask whoever at the county heads up that. And I'm trying to remember what the name of that organization is, but there's some redevelopment. Oh, it's the oversight.
Development oversight.
Yeah,
Yeah,
where they are in their process that started 5-6 years ago.
yeah, I haven't heard.
That's more of my question. So where do you know where they're at? So.
I haven't heard. And honestly, years.
Yeah.
That might be something good to follow up on.
Wasn't there a committee under the Special District Advisory Committee?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Ed Sprague was appointed to it for a short time and then someone else.
Ed Sprague, Julie Nygaard, and then I think right now, gentleman from Lakeside Water, and I'm blanking on his name.
Board member?
I believe so.
Okay.
Could have been.
All right. It's a good follow-up question. Anything else in this one? Thank you very much. I concur with Jack. Very well written, easy to understand, and I learned a lot. So,
That was
Thank you.
Paul, but I agree.
oh, did I said Jack. Sorry, Paul. Okay. All right, Bushy BB, right? Okay, so now we are on to item 5B, which is plan update on high priorities, which it seems you have plenty.
You do?
I'm going to invite first Chris and then Adam to speak to the committee on two of the highest placed priorities that we have on our current adopted work plan. We have, as you all know, an MSR scheduled for the Sandio County Water Authority as well as MET. And then we also have an MSR on the 4 healthcare districts here in the county. So I'm going to let them update you on this and beginning with.
Thank you, Priscilla. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. Ms. Kate for LAFCO. On September 7th of 2023, letters were sent to all 24 San Diego County Water Authority member agencies, stating that LAFCO was in the process of conducting a municipal service review of wholesale water agencies, including CWA and Metropolitan. The letter further states that LAFCO would like to solicit feedback regarding the issues stakeholders believe should be included within the scope of work of the MSR of CWA specifically. This included an offer to make presentation before each member agency's governing board. Between September 20th and October 18th, staff made presentations to 6 agencies and 1 presentation to the Council of Water Utilities. We also received written feedback from 3 agencies. Staff also traveled to Los Angeles to provide comments to MWD, in which we also discussed the elements of the MSR and sought feedback on potential topics for inclusion. Based on the feedback received, the following topics were consistently presented by the agencies and/or their governing boards. I need to change the voting structure, a review of rate structure and need to shift revenue recovery to fixed costs, a review of take-or-pay contracts and potential alternative uses, a review of operational facilities and respective future needs, and ensuring alignment of future demand projections. These topics are merely a summary of the feedback received, and other topics were raised that could potentially be topics that merit review during the development of the MSR. In that vein, we have established a working group of 11 member agency general managers, including the County Water Authority, to assist in providing feedback on various elements of the MSR. We held our first meeting this week where we discussed the feedback received, review potential topics that may be included in the scope of the MSR, and discuss the expectation of the working group. Our hope is to hold a total of approximately 5 meetings over the coming months to assist in developing additional information pertaining to these items and potential inclusion within the MSR. During this outreach track, we've also been developing the financial analysis sections for both CWA and MWD. Additionally, we've engaged Dr. Michael Hanneman to assist in the development of the MSR. Staff has met with Dr. Hanneman numerous times, and we are in the process of finalizing a scope of work. Originally, our hope was to provide an administrative draft by the end of the fiscal year. After reviewing the scope of work with Dr. Hanneman, we've expanded our review period from 10 to 15 years. Therefore, the review and analysis will add additional time to our review. We will attempt to work expeditiously as this MSR is a top priority of the commission. Thank you, and available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chris. Does anyone have any questions? No? All right, that was easy.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, committee members, Adam Wilson, other consultant to LAFCO that has been tasked to the healthcare MSR, which is the 4 healthcare districts in San Diego County, which for your reminder are Fallbrook, Tri-City, Palomar, and Grossmont. As Priscilla indicated earlier when she teed this up, this is one of the 2 priority projects the LAFCO Commission has commenced beginning mid last year. Our initial work has been through LAFCO staff with the data collection and financial budget information from all 4 districts, which will help develop the general framework to our MSR. We've also conducted preliminary outreach and education. We've met with each CEO of the 4 healthcare districts individually and met once as collectively as a group. Our focus through this process has to be a grounds up approach. We've also attended each individual board meeting for each district and have notified them of our efforts and to elicit any feedback from their end. We've also met with individual stakeholders such as the County of San Diego, the health officials, and the Hospitals Association. We've also been currently meeting with 2 potential healthcare consultants, and currently LAFCO staff is working on developing a scope of work for that consultant process, which includes a professional service agreement for a future contract to be executed. Working on a more detailed course of action for the healthcare MSR, we've internally started to digest that perhaps a level phase 1 and a level phase 2 approach might be more amenable to our process, which is a phase 1 being a more macro level on identifying some major themes and takeaways, and then phase 2 digesting a little bit deeper and digging into the nuances. I'd like to just, before closing, reemphasize LAFCO's message here is we want to make this process as transparent and as inclusive as possible to get an end product that is favorable to all parties and aims to invoke real change to delivery of these services to our communities. And with that, I know this issue may not touch all the special districts in this room, but perhaps the fire officials may have the most interest with how the operations of these healthcare districts may be impacting fire and EMS services. So I would entertain your engagement, your participation, and any feedback that you might have provided through the process. And I'm more than happy to meet with any of you offline to have those discussions. So with that, conclude my presentation and we'll entertain any questions.
Looks like we have one. All right.
Yeah, how has your analysis been impacted with the recent privatization of administration? How is that? Is that thrown a real left curve into it?
Yeah, obviously, with the recent news articles that have popped up with not just the affiliation with Tri-City and talks with Palomar, but also the privatization of the C-suite and the executive office. That's something that we're continuing to work with the Palomar officials to better understand what those mechanics are and what it means to the impacts of those communities and their boards. But that's something that we've got to have dialogue on. And so the information to that is kind of to be determined, but we are, as an agency, very curious on how that materializes the MSR.
Given that it's brand new and privatization is just sitting in now, how long do you think it'll take before you have the same level of confidence in the data coming back from those groups under the privatization as you had prior to that? It's gonna take you another 3 months to try to come up to speed, or is it a lot less than that?
Frankly, I'm not sure if I have an answer for what the direct timeline would look like. I mean, it's my understanding.
That, I don't know if I would say it's complicated, but it certainly adds a layer of nuance that we're trying to get a handle on. Like, how do you deal with, well, that's subject to an NDA, we can't disclose it.
Well, in your documentation, you show that there are 4 healthcare agencies. You're gonna evaluate them in 2 parts. It sounds like ones that have the privatization are gonna be secondary, gonna be the second part, and the other ones you have a better handle on are gonna be first. Is that an accurate statement?
I think that's fair. I mean, I think we've had discussions on even bifurcating it to the level of analysis where I think, the 4 healthcare districts share a lot of commonalities and similarities to what they're doing in terms of operations, but there will be those nuances and differences on how individually they're all operating as well. So that's something that we'll have to consider and navigate, but I could see some sort of level of looking at them through 2 different lenses, and then in the end product, then merging them all together.
Thank you.
Comment if I may. With the hospital districts, one of the shared challenges that the fire service and the hospital districts have right now is wall times, and offload times. And we're trying to address it through communication and collaboration in other arenas, but I don't think we've touched this one per se through the MSR process, which might be a unique way of helping it. Chief McQueen is the chair of the county chiefs. Don't know if it's appropriate to have Adam or some of the other analysts come to one of our meetings April and do a presentation and get some feedback from all of the chiefs across the county that might help you build that MSR, appropriately for that issue at least. Absolutely.
And help everybody's cause.
The comment is duly noted, and I'm more than happy to attend to forge that relationship and start those communications, because as I've indicated we're not the healthcare experts, and this healthcare system is very complicated, very complex. It has multiple layers. It's going to take meeting with individuals and groups like you to kind of better understand your guys' world, how it's impacted and so forth. So I'm more than happy to entertain coming to your guys' meeting and starting that dialogue.
Yeah, I think that would be the best thing. We'll provide you that opportunity to do a presentation, and then provide you a chair for the response back.
Yeah, and I might note too, like at some point in this process, there will be some level of a stakeholders group, which we want you to participate with, you guys being an important stakeholder and technical to this whole thing. So let's have those conversations up front and start from there.
Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you very much. Okay, are we good on 5B? All right, fabulous. And we are now on to 5C, which is the proposed work plan and budget for 24-25. Got this one.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Warner. Committee members, so Priscilla Mumpower, Assistant Executive Officer with the Legal Lab. I'm going to be going over agenda item 5C with you all, which is our proposed draft work plan and budget for the upcoming fiscal year. So the item serves as a second step that is required under statute with respect to us formalizing San Diego LAFCO's work plan and budget for fiscal year 24-25. The first step involved taking us to our commission, and we did at the March meeting, and we brought forward the 2 related policy documents, and they were approved, but now we're proceeding forward with the public review and comment period, which does also involve coming forward to the committees. And yesterday we presented this item to the City Advisory Committee, and then today we're presenting to you all. This is an opportunity for you to review the 2 policy documents and provide any feedback, and also an opportunity to perhaps provide any recommendations that you'd like for us to then forward to commission. And so, as detailed in the report or in the pamphlet that you all have, proposed workload largely represents the status quo in continuing the commission's productivity in tackling LAFCO duties and interests with all the mechanics which are involved. We continue to identify 30 projects that we believe capture both existing and new activities and in priority order. And I'm going to go over those in the next 2 slides. So this first slide captures our top 10 projects. They serve as our highest priorities. These include several existing and otherwise big list projects that by design are going to take more than a year to complete. And that would include the 2 MSRs that you just heard about today from Chris and Adam, right? The County Water Authority Met MSR, as well as the Healthcare District's MSR. This next slide is going to capture the other 20 projects and are the medium and lower priorities for the upcoming fiscal year. And these are going to capture some of the newer projects that we have on our mind. So some prime examples of new projects are, for example, number 12, which is a municipal service review on SDAC and its housing and transportation function. This also includes an informational report, number 15, on government homeless services in the county and potential alternatives, and then their merits work, have C merits therein. Also on the screen, you'll note number 14, which is staffing the Special Districts Advisory Committee. So if there's any comments on changes to the schedule or any other observations that you'd like to provide, we'd be interested in hearing those. And so with the invite to go into more details on the work plan, I'm now going to turn over to the proposed budget. So this too is largely status quo with the exception of some targeted enhancements that collectively contribute to a 6.3% increase on the bottom line operating. So specifically, the 6.3% increase means LAFCO would go from about 2.3 million in operating expenses current year to 2.4 million next year. So what does the additional 100K plus in funding provide the commission? So a couple of things in particular as summarized on this next slide. So first, it would help absorb the inflationary changes for LAFCO's baseline operations, and including accommodating a 2.8% increase to an adjustment that's pre-approved cost of living adjustment for all of our employees. It would also provide additional monies to cover the need for additional consultant work, and it would better reflect recent actuals. So as you know, we have our MSRs and we need to bring in the experts to help us complete these. So that's what you'll see there. And then the third would be to help fund a partnership that we've recently engaged in with Assure Group. And this would be to launch a customized project management system that would help all of us sort of keep up with all of our different projects. And at any point in time, staff can log in and see the progress on any one of our projects. So this said, we are sensitive to the increase in our operating costs while agencies are looking to reduce theirs. So we've been careful to do our best in cutting where we can and reducing the overall expense in the budget to get as close as we can to the 5.8% inflation benchmark for San Diego County. So a prime example of this includes reducing our budgeted staffing levels from 9 full-time employees to 8 full-time employees. And this involves eliminating the vacant executive assistant position. And hopefully this would help steady the labor costs. Nevertheless, we would like to add this back in at some near-term points and in line with making more progress on our MSRs and hopefully reducing our consultant usage. So as I mentioned at the beginning, our intention is to bring this back to our commission in May and receive final approval after having completed the public review and comment period. So today we're looking for, after discussion, any comments or feedback on this and perhaps any formal recommendations you may have. So with that, I'm going to conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to add to Priscilla's comments, so the end result is you're looking at a 6.3% increase to our operating costs, which means essentially a 6.3% increase in your annual contribution. So whatever that number was last year, depending on the adjustment of revenues that get rolled into accounting for the new year, that's what you'd be looking at with one rather prominent qualification. So at the commission's last meeting, we added a special district to our registry. So they are now going to be participating in your costs. So instead of there just being 56 paying members, special districts, there's now 57, that 57 being the Port of San Diego. And because of their revenue amount, I would actually suspect that some of you will actually see a decrease. They will likely become our most prominent funder of the special districts. So in that sense, I would assume most of you will be looking at a change under that CPI 5.8, and some may actually see a decrease. Certainly the larger contributors like Levihain, Helix, and Padre. So additional context. So as Priscilla mentioned, this is for you to weigh in on both the projects that are on the work plan, their priority order, and then obviously the budget as you see fit, whether as a group or you certainly can provide us comments as individual members up and through really the probably the second to last week of April before we pivot and prepare a final document. So thank you, Chair.
And I was going to say, I think the biggest increases are outside services, and based on, there's some fairly complex MSRs lined up, which I think the way to do that is how you're doing it with consultants. You want to hire staff for things that are that specialized, and depending what happens in the next few years, you may need less. Maybe after you get through the SANDAG one, whenever that comes up. But, you are dealing with some of the bigger issues and more complex ones in the county. So to me, it makes sense that there is going to be some increase to bring in the resources to do those. So when you do make sense. So I support it as it's shown.
I support you. I just had a question. What was the fiscal impact? Priscilla, did I understand you correctly with the executive assistant role? Are you taking it off the org chart or just not funding it this year? And if you're taking off the org chart, and did you say you wanted to add it back in the future?
So we are going to eliminate it for now and would like to bring it back in the future once we sort of get through the MSR work. For now, we budgeted for an administrative analyst to sort of help as well. And an administrative assistant position is also vacant. So we're going to, and it's within the work plan, to fill these vacant positions with the exception of the executive assistant position, and float us through until we get through these MSRs and then hopefully bring that back later on.
What's the fiscal impact of the executive assistant position? Does it take you from 6.3 to 7.5 or?
So the net cost of the executive assistant by eliminating it with a salary and benefits is about $110,000.
Okay.
And so that essentially is covering, about 70% of what we are looking to add to our professional services or consulting.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. My suggestion would be to request to not fund it and not take it off the org chart. That way you don't have to go back and get it. It sounds like you're gonna need it.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, here's the question. Operating expenses are 2.4 million, operating revenues are 2.37. How do you?
So we're in very good, Oliver. So we are taking just about the same amount of reserves that we have budgeted over the last few years and using it as offsetting revenues to make up that that gap of $40,000. In generally speaking, because of, it's somewhat a paper coverage because we have these two budgeted positions that we are going to fill, but they're right now vacant And I don't think we'll have both positions filled before we get into the new fiscal year. I don't think we'll end up having to use it, but just for purposes of the paper, we're looking at drawing down on our unassigned reserves, and then just well, let me look at it. Talking about our unassigned reserves, just so you are aware, one of the things that we've been trying to do at LAFCO is build up the reserves. So I think right now we're at 1.5 million, which is not bad, right? So our operating budget is 2.4. One of the things though we want to do, and we perhaps have 8 years to think about it, and our 2 special district members who represent you on our LAFCO are certainly interested in this, is get away from leasing. And so one of the goals was, hey, can we buy our own office building? That wasn't an option for us 2 years ago when we were leaving the county. We just didn't have that type of money available. But in the long term, it certainly makes sense. And so as you all do your own capital improvement planning and think about, administrative centers, I don't know if there would ever be interest in a joint administrative center with LAFCO, but over the next few years, if that topic comes up, we'd be interested in talking to you. So just again.
So how much room do you need?
It was a good question. 2,000 square feet is what we have now. But we do, and I think our commission likes the idea of, we've been here for 60 years, most likely we'll be here for another 60 years. A permanent place would make sense. So just added context.
But it sounds like it's more than likely, 100% execution of the budget is probably not going to happen. So that revenue gap, you probably will ultimately end up building reserves over this year. But if, all the positions were filled through the year and you got all the projects done, there'd be a slight draw from reserves. But if something doesn't happen, then you'll probably get some amount.
And so ultimately, we also want to get to the point where we are no longer having to use reserves on paper to make us whole when we do this exercise. And, it's just been a very long orientation at LAFCO to, use 100,000 or so in reserves to make up the difference. And we're trying to get that number low. But, we talked about eliminating that this year, but of course, some of the cities said, hey, we're no longer getting the COVID refunding. It's not the year to cut that.
Just a question, since we're talking about reserve here. So it looks like you have 3 categories there. Can you provide us with a definition of the category? I mean, if the from title, it's appeared to be self-explanatory, but I'm sure there are more nuance to it. For example, on committed, can you provide a list of committed project that's allocating those fundings? And also part of it, is there a commission established minimum, maximum, or target associated with it? This again is something we comment on our side of it. It's for federal reserve. It's a clear definition. There's clear minimum, clear maximum, so on and so forth.
Very good. And just for the benefit of those following, so if you're looking at page 12, oh, okay, maybe not. But if you're looking at, let's see here, do they get? I'm not sure. Hold on one second. I was looking at another packet. But at least for the benefit of narrating. So right now, we have 3 assignments that add up to $1,520,000 in spendable reserves. As Al mentioned, we have about $750,000 dedicated between 2 committed categories, one being stabilization, one being opportunity. The way the commission defines stabilization is kind of unexpected cash flow shortfalls, whatever that may be. Maybe Kim gets tricky and doesn't send us her annual contribution to LAFCO. Something goes astray in our cash flow. Opportunity, as the name suggests, that actually is kind of for the future LAFCO office, if you will, something that we can invest in and ultimately get a return on. And then last but not least, assigned to executive officer, that amount, which I might actually increase between now and the final budget, right now is set at 62,000. That's money that I'm allowed to access without going to the commission, thank you, for any of our top 10 projects. So one of the benefits or the significance of our 1 through 10 ranking is if I need extra Chris Kate time, Adam Wilson time, Tom Kennedy time, I can tap into that money and cover the cost without having to get commission approval. And then in terms of minimum balance, I think our unassigned amounts have to equal at least 1/4 of our operating costs. And I believe we also have a ceiling that says it can't be more than 50% of our operating costs. So between 50 and 25 is the floor and ceiling of our unassigned reserves. And I think right now we're like at 30.
Are your reserves in an interest-bearing account, I'm assuming run by the county?
Yes.
Okay.
Although if you look at what we've been getting in those interest returns and our actuals, yeah, not much. So what they're investing in, I do not.
I'm sure they're tasked like the rest of us protect the principal at all costs, which gives you low rate of returns.
Yeah.
Did I see your hand or I can't turn? Okay. Does anyone else have anything?
Just one suggestion based on Oliver's comment that this is just a summary. You actually have a budget document.
And I failed to include it.
Okay,
And
no, that's fine. Just so like what we do in ours is if we're drawing from reserves, we'll identify the revenue source and then, add, transfer from reserves so that it evens out, so you're showing it. And that way, to Keith's point, if you don't spend it, you don't have to draw from reserves at the end. Just a thought. So.
Are you guys the guinea pig on this Assura software? I've heard rumor that you're the first one to try this out. Is it?
Oh, for the first, but we're definitely in the queue. And Michaela and Carol Ann. Carol's wasn't feeling well today. I've been in the background with the New Zealand gentleman and Tom Kennedy, and we're looking forward to it because there's no easy Microsoft project tracker that works for us. So they've come up with at least a demo that caught our attention.
Maybe you negotiate that if it's successful at this LAFCO and it's adopted by others, you get a discount a year. I do know that's a contract form that has been used in the past.
That's called kickback.
It's called being the cutting edge. Yeah. Okay, just any other comments or questions? I just, from my perspective, I think, especially in light of inflation and in light of the workload that you guys have in front of you this year, 6.3 is very reasonable. Yeah. All right, well then I think we conclude at that item and we are now on to the grant work update, Sustainable Agricultural Lands Conservation Planning Grant. And Michaela, we got you. Yep, it's me again. All right.
Before the committee is the report and update on the commission's first year activities as awardee and grant manager of the Sustainable Agricultural Lands Conservation Grant, also referred to by staff as SALC 2.0. This check-in serves as an opportunity for the committee to ask questions, provide feedback on our ongoing first year activities. But before we get into what we're working on today, I want to backtrack a little bit and give a refresher on SALC 1.0 and its key outcomes and policy recommendations that came from it. And as you probably remember, Joel Kramer came in September and gave an awesome presentation. So I just wanted to touch on a few of those details. So SALC 1.0 was a grant that was awarded by the Department of Conservation, which we entered into with the RCD of Greater San Diego, among other collaborators such as Mission RCD, the Farm Bureau, Food Shed, and others, with the goal of mapping agricultural lands, performing outreach with producers through meetings, going to their farms to discuss their wants and needs, and attending events to further strengthen our analysis. After the outreach phase, we engaged with government agencies to help identify policies where we could bridge the gaps between what is available now and where local government could step in the future. All of the data collected helped us to identify 10 policy recommendations that I will briefly go over and are provided on the screen, including assign agricultural liaisons for city and county governments, design lease agreements that invest in working lands, create a regional land use plan to prioritize agriculture, fund growers to transition to low water use crops and irrigation, equip and incentivize producers to adopt climate smart practices, streamline construction of farm worker housing, develop advanced water treatment facilities with priority for agricultural uses, inform small farm opportunities through analysis of cost and benefits of small farms, expand technical assistance by providing more vocational training, and build capacity of farmers and farm workers with training and services. So what we gathered from SALT 1.0 is that producers are severely underrepresented and need designated staff at government agencies to advocate for them and help them navigate the services to stay afloat, as well as make it easier for new producers to enter the industry and keep agriculture alive in San Diego. So with this in mind, SALT 2.0 draws directly on these key findings and specifically focuses on recommendation number 8. The outcomes of SALT 1.0 were more qualitative in nature and helped us understand the lay of the land and how we can directly help producers, whereas SALT 2.0 will quantify these challenges heard in SALT 1.0, diving a bit deeper into the economics to understand the difference between a marginal versus a sustainable farm. As for SALT 2.0, you may recall in September of 2022 that LAFCO, as the applicant in San Diego County Planning and Development Services, collaborated in submitting a planning grant under SALC for the purpose of performing a market and gap analysis to help inform small farming operations in San Diego County. We were subsequently awarded a 2-year grant in the full amount of $450,000 in December of 2022, with work commencing in June of 2023. So some of our major accomplishments to date include establishing a memorandum of understanding with our county partner, Planning and Development Services, wherein we delineated roles and responsibilities, which helped kickstart establishing key partnerships with our 2 consultants, Agricultural Impact Associates and RIC Engineering. And Agricultural Impact Associates are a team of 2 agriculture experts with over 30 years of experience, specializing in the economic analysis of agriculture. Ag Impact has produced several reports helping government agencies, nonprofit organizations, and the public better understand agriculture's contributions to over 20 of the state's local governments or local economies. This is why we chose them to assist in the completion of tasks 2 and 3, and specifically involving the market data collection and aggregation, a gap analysis of marginal and sustainable farm operations in the county, and the eventual preparation of a written report with findings. And RIC Engineering is assisting in the completion of tasks 4 through 6, specifically involving meeting facilitation, report review, and most importantly, conducting constituent outreach and education by collaborating firsthand with producers and ag stakeholders to help us in the market and gap analysis. So as we've also started work on 4 of the 6 approved grant tasks as shown up on the screen. And the second task, market analysis, has been the focal point of most of the work to date and headlined by Ag Impact Associates developing criteria that ultimately resulted in the selection of 4 focal crops for the market analysis. These 4 crops included avocados, lemons, strawberries, and tomatoes. And criteria for the selection of these crops focus on economic, environmental, and social sustainability with a priority of ensuring that we're casting a wide net across the county. As of late, we began focusing more on the fourth task, outreach and education, including retaining Rick Engineering as a consultant who will hold a series of producer and stakeholder meetings, as we concurrently invite them to participate and provide data to aid our market analysis. And with respect to the fifth and sixth tasks, we remain on schedule to produce a strategic plan report early next year and final draft report in the spring of 2025, with the plan of bringing our policy recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. Further details on the grant are within your agenda, as well as in the attachment 1 detailing the work plan and schedule. And with that, I will end my presentation. I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Questions again?
Not a question so much, just a couple of comments. Thanks for the report. It's really great to hear the progress that's been made on this work. And kind of just to add on, it's really great that this is tackling task 8 and moving that forward. When Joel presented back in September, part of his presentation noted a grant that we had applied for in collaboration with the county for the Department of Conservation's Climate Smart Land Management Program. That grant was awarded to the county. And so the work funded by that grant will help address the policy recommendations number 1, 4, and 5. So, which was the ag liaison, looking at the lower water use crops, and then incentives for producers for climate smart and management.
Some
or practices. Yeah.
Cool.
So I'm sure we'll be in touch about all that and continue to work together.
So thank you.
A couple of questions. So one, when they pick the crops, I think the biggest output is nursery and ornamentals. Do you know why they didn't include that?
I think there were a few reasons why they didn't include that, but I think one of the biggest ones was that they're one of the key contributors to carbon emissions. So we didn't really want to include them in this one. Priscilla, can you maybe touch a little bit further on that?
Yeah, so there were 3 things that we focused in on as part of the selection of the crops. It was economics, social sustainability, and environmental sustainability, and each of those having sort of like this sub metric. So, and I'm looking at the spreadsheet because I knew this question might come up, so excuse I kind of look. But so for economic sustainability, it was like, what is the farm gate production value? And lining up all sort of the crops that are grown in the county and then assigning a metric to that. And then for social sustainability, it was the number and the diversity of farms and farmers. And for environmental, it was wanting to avoid the loss of agricultural lands and avoid greenhouse gas emissions. So when you put that on the spectrum with some of those crops, we started to sort of line up the ones that had the highest value. And that's how we came up with the 4 crops. We also wanted to cast a wide net. So that was one of our, I guess, concerns, is that we would focus in on a crop that wasn't going to cover the entire account. And so through the help of these consultants, they sort of helped us dial it in, and planning and development services helped with that too. It's the PACE program. I guess they have a lot of experience with this, and they also help with the selection of crops.
Is there flexibility in the crop? Only saying that because of the wine industry starting to increase. So I don't know if that has an effect.
Yeah, it's starting to blossom.
Yeah. The part of that, just in a layman's term, is right. So part of the focus is small farming and encouraging new small farming. So you think about a winery, the upfront cost of starting a winery or trying to get into the cabal of the nursery industry. That's just going to be tough for the mom and or the husband and wife farmer. And part of this is to help kind of map out, here are all your costs that you should expect, here are all your revenue opportunities, and hopefully help bridge some of the regulatory work through the grant for small farmers. So another way to say it is just, I think the floral and the winery, those are probably people who are already have some kind of finances to be able to get into the game. Whereas the Anns of the world who want to have an arsehole strawberry patch. I actually want bees, but the bees did not include that. That's kind of this focus.
All right, and then the other thing, we're really noticing, we've got a program we're working on regionally, the crop swap program needs kind of North County, which is sort of help fund, there's already money, RCP money up there that is through an existing grant that's water efficiency improvements. That's through Mission that has had a little bit of trouble getting moving in some ways, but there's money allocated. I think, we're more focused now with the farmers, not necessarily using less water. So I think it's important to note a lot of areas where the farming is, the water use in those areas over the Rainbow Valley Center has gotten to be so low that the water systems become almost inefficient if you keep using less water. So really what we're focused on is using the water efficiently, right? So not necessarily using less. So avocados, you're not going to necessarily, you're not going to replant avocados, or you're not going to take all the avocados out and go to wine grapes. There's already challenges with just growing wine grapes as it is. So it's really about, can we incentivize people to be efficient with the water that's available and focus more on that than just, hey, we want you to keep using less and less water. There's some floor where it becomes a quality. So that's really what we're, most of us up there focused on, is how do we make it viable for people to keep farming, and it's okay if they keep using the same amount of water. We don't need it. So I just want to make sure we don't end up with some kind of disconnect where we're working, cross purposes on different efforts. So hopefully we can kind of coordinate, what's happening in the success or lack of success we have in that crop swap program and our work we're doing with our growers in the RCP program. That ties into what's happening here, because they seem a little bit in some ways disconnected.
I had a follow-up question. So this is not about salt, but this is something we were talking about today. So that's interesting, the dynamic of wanting people to be water efficient, but not necessarily lower water use, just make better use of the water for all. So one of the things that I noticed in Escondido is everyone's yard was ripped out many years ago because they were incentivized to go dry landscape. Aesthetically, doesn't look great all the time. Are water agencies starting to figure out a way where they can start messaging and encouraging people to put back lawns while being more efficient in their use? Because it makes a difference to me aesthetically, and then it would give retail sale entities more revenue.
You want me to answer that? I don't think you'll ever hear water agencies market put grass back. But we do market and hold contests for water-wise landscape makeovers that are both beautiful, and that is actually our message. They can be beautiful and water-wise. But I don't know of anybody who's marketing go back to grass.
And there's retail, because statewide we're getting requirements. Residential, we're having to really ramp down on residential indoor and outdoor use. But irrigation, you're not required to reduce your irrigation. It's about being smart with the water that's available. You want to produce food. And so I think that's really where there's an opportunity where we kind of have a fair amount of water available regionally to focus on that more than, trying to increase residential use. That message will get us in a lot of trouble as water agencies. We're out doing there's this big incentive to take your grass out, and then Fall Public Utility District has an incentive program to put grass back. That will get us in cross-threaded with the state legislature.
A victim, a little bit of our own success, the water use efficiency regs that were supposed to have been out, and I think they just re-released a revised draft. There's a whole debate on irrigated versus irrigable and what you get credit for. And the proposal is by the state, we don't agree with it, that if it's irrigated, then you get a water and allotment for it. But if it's irrigable, meaning it's one of these lawns that you don't actually get a credit for it. And that's problematic as properties change hands. So we're all about to get into a big discussion about irrigated versus irrigable and water use adaptations.
Yeah, just another nuance on that top too, it's a kind of that new terminology they added about functional versus non-functional.
Function, yeah.
So with landscape, again, there's more view toward defining more functional landscape, so not necessarily how lawn lawns, but if it's a functional, like soccer field, baseball field, things along those lines, those are functional. However, it's just there for decorating purpose. That seems like a waste and not very efficient use of resources. And certainly, I've seen a lot more folks convert the landscape to water wise landscape, but I see a lot more orchards and strawberry farms. Actually, the other day, I drove by somebody's front yard, and that person tore down a lawn. It's a new small strawberry patch. So,
Any other questions, comments? Yes, and
Just wanted to add on, Jack, to what you were saying about water efficiency, and just to point out, the resource conservation districts here in San Diego County are working together on water audits for farms across the county, both through water authority funds and state funding. So we're definitely, I hope, promoting the same message of efficiency, you know, looking at what farmers are doing now and how their water use can be more efficient for the benefit of their crops.
It also seems like there was a drive to put houses on land because houses use less water than farming. If you can keep that land in farming, you can keep the water use, you can make it more efficient. But you still have that water use available. They turn it into a flock of houses, then you go backwards. It seems like that. So
I was actually surprised many years ago to hear that that's in LAFCO's mission, is protecting and sustaining agricultural land. So congratulations on this ground. I think this is a very innovative way to approach it. Jack has one more. Okay.
Yeah, I think one of the key things too is to make sure, different areas have different pressures on their agricultural land. So Oceanside is housing, right? They're trying to protect their ag land. Fallbrook, Rainbow Valley Center, largely now it's water. It's not housing. It's just, can they keep the growth going or not? But no one's building houses there, so it's going to go away. So I think getting that cross section is kind of important because it's very, regional and it needs. But the stakeholder meetings, where are they planned to be, or is that something, they're going to be throughout the county more where there are ag properties, versus areas like downtown where they're not anywhere, where are the planned?
We have not yet planned the meetings. We just had our initial meeting with Rick Engineering, I think it's about 2 weeks ago, or about a week ago. And so but that is certainly something that we'll keep in mind for example, Soft 1.0, we're having it up in Escondido and hopefully helping with that. But no, I think the idea is certainly to come to them and be as approachable as possible. And we're holding them to Farm Bureau then. So I anticipate that's something that will continue. If we find something that farmers are saying, hey, it'd be more convenient if we sit here, then I'm certainly open to it and will definitely direct the team in that direction.
Okay. All right. And that concludes 5D. Thank you guys very much on that. We are on to 5E, selection of chair and vice chair for 2024 for policy.
Second.
I have a question. I missed the December meeting, but I did read the minutes about extending the terms via bylaws. Did we do that? Or I just want to make sure I'm actually still on this committee.
So you certainly are. So we pushed it back just because the attendance was a little light, and we wanted to make sure that we took care of it later on. There is a question, I guess, on the bylaws, and we took it off because we wanted to kind of bring it up as a topic of we're conducting elections like every
It feels like you're always conducting elections.
Yes.
right? Yeah.
And so hopefully getting it back on track to just like once and then waiting 2 years and then again, perhaps Kate can help me word this better, but instead of doing it every year, because right now it's doing an election for one set and then doing it again for another set of members.
Was the goal to get everyone on the same term matching?
They would like to do that.
Okay.
So the thought is, so half of you are serving on expired terms, but that's okay.
Okay.
It's contemplated both for commissioners and for advisory committee members. You can serve on expired terms until your successor or your new term is established. So what we were thinking of doing is coming to you at your next meeting with a bylaw change that would, because the other half of you are going to have terms that expire in October, and simply hold one election for the October group in which 16 members are appointed to a 4-year term.
Okay.
That makes
sense. Yeah.
And that way we get to know you all better, and that way, maybe there could be some better consistency, although we've been lucky of late, but the turnover, LAFCO is a bit of an art to get used to. So having 4-year terms in which everyone's serving together, I think is a plan.
You're gonna get a lifetime appointment.
Come on. I agree with a 4-year term. There's still a lot said for half, every 2 years, half of them turn over. And there's a reason for that, and that is if change has to happen, it happens in 2 years and not a major change where you could potentially have to start all over.
Sure.
At 4 years. Sure. So I think there's a strong benefit to keeping 4 years terms, but staggering half and half at 2-year intervals.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only counter to think about with that is people that are interested enough to do it's not that hot an item to be on this advisory committee. So those of us that really are interested in this will tend to do it for some. So I don't think you'd ever get a thing where you get a massive turnover where everyone leaves at the same time. And generally, this isn't that contentious an issue where there's somebody out there that goes, I got to get a whole new group of special district advisory committee members. So I think it's generally, you're going to still, even if you do it all at once, you're not going to get a wholesale turnover unless all of us are retiring at the same time or something else. So it seems like a lot of work to have to do multiple elections for something that's probably unlikely to get a wholesale turnover this group in an election. If you can even find, it's hard enough to find 16 people.
So what we can do though, Oliver, is we can present options for you to take up, and maybe one is, half of you initially would get 4 years, and the other half would get a one-time 6-year term. And then go through that process.
Also, we're all, or just keep serving in perpetuity with no election.
That's what's happening now for half of
Very efficient staff.
Okay, so I take it that this will come back, the bylaws and the elections will come back as subsequent agenda item. But for purposes of chair and vice chair, all of us are eligible, and this is just for this year, 1 year, 2024.
Yes.
Lifetime. All right. We have a motion in a second. Is there any other nominations? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Sure. So it entertain a motion for vice chair.
I motion to nominate Jack E. to continue serving in perpetuity.
What I have one request before that goes in. Jack, do you want it?
I'm happy to do it as long as Kim's chair.
Although I specifically did not ask that.
We have a first and a second. Any other nominations? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, all right.
Sorry, but I always find it wise to ask. Well, person.
If it wasn't Jack, I would have, but I didn't really care whether he wanted.
And this is a fun group to work, so you guys might get fun and easy. With that, we move on to committee member reports, an opportunity to talk about anything that is happening at your district. And I actually want to give Chris Palmer a heads up. I was going to ask you to come up. You had the opportunity to discuss with me the federal legislation that CSDA is sponsoring. I think that would be important to the group, but I'll give you a moment. We'll start with the committee members and then end with you if that's all right.
Sure.
Okay. Thanks.
I mean, it's not quite specific on that, but and I'm not sure if this is the right place, but last month we talked about a fee waiver, fee reduction issue for funding agencies through Barry Willis. And I think that was going to be some follow-up. I was just wondering where that stands.
So the follow-up was going to occur, I think, at a future CSDA dinner.
Which we subsequently had.
Okay, so then, I wasn't at that dinner, so I don't know if there was interest amongst the CSDA members. There wasn't, so.
That was there.
I was there.
Okay.
It didn't happen.
Yeah, one of our team members got up to speak,
Yeah.
but I think there might have been a disconnect between just giving people an overview of the issue versus actively or proactively reaching out to see under what kind of situations and stuff. So I was just wondering, on one hand, it sounds like something that worth looking at. On the other hand, if there's no need to spend time on it, I'm just not sure where it stands.
Yeah, well, and I could offer up that the commission itself, when they were presented with it, was agnostic and thought, well, if the cities or districts are interested in such a thing, let's hear from them.
And I think the idea of the dinner was just to present and then say, hey, if you have ideas, reach out to us at LAFCO. I think maybe the lack of reach out, because we ran into the same issue here as we all struggled to determine an example. So that's why we went to the dinner to say, hey, maybe other people have an example, but it seems like theoretically it sounds good, but everyone's struggling to figure out sort of where it would benefit.
Yeah, plus they were serving dessert during the speech, so. They were the best. Okay, so it's just sort of there, and at some point it may come back.
And we could follow up through the next CSDA dinner, just as a reminder, this was discussed, if anyone has any input and direct them to the lab. Carol.
Oh, yeah, Carol.
Carol. So we'll direct them to Carol and see if people have any feedback.
Any other committee member updates? Anne?
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to share that last month, San Diego hosted the National Association of Conservation Districts Conference, bringing representatives and partners from across the country. Our city was really involved in a lot of the planning efforts, especially for some conference tours, and so we were able to showcase a lot of the great conservation and agricultural work going on here in the county. And I also wanted to let y'all know that San Diego is also hosting the Governor's Wildfire and Forest Resilience Task Force meeting next month on April 4th. There'll be a resource fair in the morning and then a day of panel discussions. And then the following day will be a day of tours, a variety of forest health and fire programs and projects going on across the county. The last day for registration is March 27th, and the meeting will take place at the Safari Park on April 4th, and then the tours are scattered around the county. So if anybody's interested, you can just Google Wildfire Task Force, or I can share a link.
Thank you. Any other committee reports? No, Chris, would you mind talking to us about that federal legislation?
Sure. Scott, right, no problem talking, so, first of all, I'm Chris Palmer, I'm the Senior Public Affairs Field Coordinator for CSDA, if you don't know me. I represent all of Southern California, which includes the counties of Orange, LA, San Bernardino, Riverside, Imperial, and San Diego. So I spoke with Kim, and many of you may have gotten an email in a milestone really for the nation's special districts. Last week, the U.S. House Oversight and Accountability Committee approved the Special District Grant Accessibility Act, which is HR 7525, bipartisan sponsor of the bill. We have a Republican out of Texas. We have a Democrat out of Colorado who are co-sponsoring the bill. We're right now collecting more co-sponsors for this. And basically the reason for this is, so let me back up a little bit. A couple of years ago, CSDA decided to form the National Special Districts Coalition, which every CSDA member is a member of that. And we partnered with 8 other states. So we could start actively lobbying at the federal level. Many of you, well, probably because you heard me talk at the chapter dinners, but special districts, as of right this moment, are technically not defined in federal statute. And that was a problem when all the COVID relief funds were coming through in 2021, 2022, and special districts could not apply for those funds directly. And they had to go to either the state, they had to go to the county, or they had to go to the city. And so obviously this is problematic. The special districts provide the same essential life services that cities and counties do. You should have an equal playing field. So this has been our #1 priority. And so we're thrilled that we actually got the bill not only authored, but it's written well, and it passed the first committee, the House and Accountability, 38-2. So there's no fiscal impact. This will hopefully go to the House floor. We don't know when that is, but it's Congress, so I'm not going to even try to guess when that's going to come through. Also, in addition to establishing this definition, the bill also directs federal agencies to recognize special districts as local governments for the purpose of ensuring that districts are eligible to receive appropriate forms of federal assistance, including funding and resources in key grant programs. So, like I said, we don't know when the bill is going to go to the floor. My guess is, and this is just a guess, it'll probably go into the suspense file since it's non-controversial. There's no fiscal impact, which means it'll be lumped in with a bunch of other bills, and it's just passed by a vote, hopefully of 2/3. We just don't know when that's going to happen. So. Jack, who's president of the local San Diego CSDA chapter, was kind enough to send out my request to all the special districts. If you do not get it, let me know. I'll be happy to give you some information, but we're asking our districts to contact your local members of Congress, ask them to co-sponsor the bill. Again, there's no fiscal impact, there's no controversy. This is, as legislation goes, it's kind of a no-brainer. It's really a slam dunk, or it should be. And we'll keep you all updated as this bill hopefully moves its way through Congress. So that is the big thing at the federal level. Statewide, obviously the budget's an issue. So for you districts that may have been granted a budget appropriation request, or we like to call them earmarks, if you haven't got the check yet, I would contact your local legislator to obtain that for you, because there may be clawbacks when they go for the budget, when they do cuts. So try to get that check in. And then lastly, on the professional development side, CSDA will be hosting the Special District Leadership Academy here in San Diego, at the Embassy Suites, April 14th through the 17th. We do have scholarships available. So for you San Diego districts, you can get your registration paid for. Since you're in San Diego, you don't have to pay for hotels. So that could be a very financially prudent way to do our Special District Leadership Academy, which is really geared towards board members. GMs are totally welcome, but it's really geared towards board members. We do have an introductory track, first time attending track, and then we also have a returning track. So if you've been before, you'll have a whole different curriculum than you had the first time you went. So that concludes my comments. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, and thank you for the work on this bill, giving all of us access to those federal funds. Very much appreciate it.
Chris, it's a template letter, so that the hope was getting everyone to sign and send that letter out.
I've got ours out.
Yeah, just be sure to copy us so we can keep track of all that. Like I said, it's pretty non-controversial, so
we could really use your support. We'd love to have the legislators actually know what it is. So that'd be, we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much.
Anything else from committee members? All right, then we are on to the executive officer report.
Just very quickly, Chair Thorner, a couple of comments or updates on the commission itself. So they appointed some new officers at our last meeting. So Stephen Whitburn from San Diego is now our chair, and Barry Willis from Alpine Fire Protection District is our vice chair. Joe McKenzie from Vista was appointed to a new 4-year term. She was the only member who received a nomination at the end of our 60 or 30-day period. So Joe's new 4-year term will begin, I think, on May 6th. And then a couple of notes on our public members. Andy Vanderland, who has served as a voting member, a public member on the commission since 1996, former firefighter, retired officially from LAFCO. And so at the last meeting, Harry Mathis, who many years ago was once a City of San Diego council member, but has served for about 20+ years as our alternate public member, is now the voting member. And that means we are now going to do a recruitment for the first time in about 30 years for the alternate position. Priscilla's going to be working with Chair Whitburn and Vice Chair Willis on that process. So if you know anyone in the community, and I know at least one commissioner is interested in the member being a unincorporated resident, at least one member of our commission, please connect with Priscilla so we can include that person in our kind of information production. So with that, we are all good on our end.
Is that vacancy an at-large public member?
Yes.
And it's the alternate.
It's the alternate, though Harry, in taking the regular position, has said he will serve out the remainder of Andy's term, which is through April of 25, and then retire himself. So realistically, it's basically a 1-year opportunity to get acquainted and then perhaps be moved up to the voting position.
And so it can be any community member, county.
It could be anyone so long as they live and they're registered in San Diego and they are not an employee or officer of the county, city, there's any of the youth special districts.
A true community member.
A true community member. So that is all.
Any questions for Keith? All right. Any other business? All right. We are adjourned. 3 minutes early.